welcome to the September 25th, 2025 meeting of the Seattle Planning Commission. As we begin our meeting, we respectfully acknowledge that our meeting today is taking place on occupied Coast Salish land. We pay respects to the Coast Salish elders past and present and extend that respect to their descendants and to all Indigenous people. To acknowledge this land is to recognize the history of physical and cultural genocide and settler colonialism, which continues to displace Indigenous people today. It is also to recognize these lands, waters, and their significance for the resilient and wise peoples who continue to thrive in this region despite the consequences of displacement and broken treaties. For those who hold settler privilege in the city, must work towards supporting the Coast Salish people and all Indigenous people using the various forms of wealth and privilege that we reap due to it. My name is Matt Hutchins. I use he, him pronouns, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Seattle Planning Commission, along with Zio Alvarez. I want to announce, or say that we're happy to make all commission meetings open to the public, and please note that Planning Commission does not hold public hearings since the commission is an advisory body. We provide recommendations to existing leaders that in turn make the actual decisions. We encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately to elected officials. This meeting is a hybrid meeting with some individuals participating remotely and others in person in the boards and commissions room at Seattle City Hall. I would like to invite any commissioner, to choose and briefly speak to one of our color space brave norms that they feel is particularly relevant for the discussion and on our agenda today. Okay.
I'd like to focus on practice examining racially biased systems as we go into that anti-displacement work. It'd be important to focus on that one.
Great. Thank you, Caleb. All right. Unless anyone has any amendments or modifications to the Color Brave space norms, I suggest that we all agree to these norms. Okay, next order of business. I would like to welcome our newest commission member, Margaret Zealous, and hopefully I got that last name correct, as our new Get Engaged member. We're going to start with a round of introductions and then end with Margaret before going to staff. So, as I said, Matt Hutchins, he, him pronouns. I live in West Seattle. And my day job is an architect. Let's see, let's just pop over to Zio.
Morning all, Zio Alvarez, I use she, they pronouns. I live in White Center, Highland Park, and my day job is at an architecture firm in downtown Seattle. I'll pass to Radhika.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Radhika Nair. I use she, her pronouns. I live in North Seattle in Wedgwood, and in my day job, I'm an urban planner. I'll pass to Caleb.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Caleb Tuolde, he, him pronouns. I live in Beacon Hill, and I work at Rainier Scholars in our leadership development department. And I'll pass it to Dylan S.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dylan Stevenson. I use he, they pronouns. I live in the Chinatown International District, and I work in the Urban Design and Planning Department at the University of Washington. And I will pass it along to Dylan G.
You can hear me? Dylan Glowacki, he, him pronouns. Organization. Picture.
Dylan, your audio is a bit choppy.
Okay, maybe I'll just put it in the chat and I'll pass it along.
That's Dylan. He's an architect. Perkins Eastman, Columbia City. Him. All right. Let's see. I see Andy.
Yeah, Andy Dannenberg, he, him, Northeast Seattle, teach at University of Washington in public health and urban planning. And I don't know who's next.
How about Nick?
Good morning, Nick Whipple. I use he, him pronouns. I, for my day job, I'm a city planner on the east side, and I live in the West Seattle neighborhood or West Seattle in the North Delridge neighborhood. How about Rose?
Morning, all. Rose Lucella Woodson, pronouns they, them. I'm up north in Licton Springs, Northgate area, and I work as a wetland biologist and permitting specialist with Jacobs for my day job. I will pass to Julia.
Morning, everyone. I'm Julia Jenin Shields, she, her. I live in Ballard, and I'm a community planner focused on equity and engagement. And I will pass it to Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca Brune, she, her pronouns. I live in Crown Hill, and my day job is working on transit-oriented development for Sound Transit. And I think, are we going to Margaret now, Matt? I think we.
Let's go to Deanna and then Margaret.
Oh, Deanna, hi.
Hi, good morning. I am Diana Quintana. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Capitol Hill, and for my day job, I'm a multimodal transportation planner. I'll pass it over to Margaret.
Audio.
Can you hear me all right?
Now we
Yep.
can.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so hello, good morning. My name is Margaret. I am the 2025-2026 Get Engaged member. And during my day job, I am a law student and I live in the Fremont area.
Welcome, Margaret. Let's go to staff. Robin.
Robin McGonigal. I use she, they pronouns. I live on Vashon Island, and I am staff to the commission.
How about John?
Good morning, everybody. I'm John Hoy. I'm staff to the Planning Commission. I use he, him pronouns. Olivia?
Good morning, everyone. Olivia Baker, she, her pronouns, and I'm staff to the Planning Commission.
Morning, everyone. I'll wrap us up. My name is Vanessa Murdoch. I use she, her pronouns, and I too am staff to the commission. So thanks everyone for joining us on this lovely autumnal morning. And I will turn it back to Matt.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. We have a couple of orders of business. First off is to approve the minutes for the September 11th, 2025 meeting. I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Rose motions, moves.
Moves, yes. Second?
Dio seconds.
Okay, thank you. Are there any changes, amendments, discussion? I don't hear any. All right, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor, say aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Don't see or hear any. Any abstentions? Don't see or hear any. Okay, all right. Minutes are approved. All right, so upcoming commission meetings. We have on next Thursday, the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee will be held from 7:30 to 9 a.m. online via the Teams platform. And then our next full commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 9th from 3 to 5:30 p.m. And then let's see, before we go to the announcements, we just have one agenda item today. It's the staff from the Office of Planning and Community Development and the Innovation and Performance team are going to brief us on the work of the city's Interdepartmental Anti-Displacement work group. Okay, Vanessa, announcements.
Great. Thanks, Matt. As Matt mentioned before, this is a hybrid meeting. All commissioners are actually joining the call via the MS Teams platform, and Olivia and I are joining you all from the Boards and Commissions room here at Seattle City Hall. During the meeting, we'll be using the chat function for commissioners to be recognized to speak. And I would just like to remind commissioners to not put substantive comments in the chat because any members of the public calling into this meeting don't have access to the chat, and we don't want to leave anybody out of our conversation. Speaking of members of the public, we are providing 3 different options for members of the public to provide public comment, either in person here in the Boards Commissions room, submitted to me in writing via email at least 8 hours before the meeting, or offered on our hybrid meeting platform, which is in MS Teams. If you are offering comment during the meeting via MS Teams, please raise your hand in the Teams meeting to be recognized to speak. And Matt or I will recognize you. And I'm just checking right now. I do not see any members of the public in the meeting, either calling in or on the Teams platform. So we do not need to read our public comment blurb, which Matt usually does. So with that, we can move to commission business. We've got about 15 minutes before we're joined by city staff to brief us on the anti-displacement work group. And I just wanted to give a very high overview of last week's select committee on the comprehensive plan. As you all well know, we've been following this for a number of years, starting back in 2022, when the commission developed 4 different issue briefs on hoping to inform the comprehensive plan, one of which was on anti-displacement. So that's rather timely, as we're going to be hearing about that later on this morning. And then we reviewed the draft plan, the environmental review. We attended the public meetings that were held, sponsored by primarily by the Office of Planning and Community Development. And that brought us to last week when the select committee entertained over 100 proposed amendments coming from the city council to both the comprehensive plan as well as to the accompanying legislation to implement, to be in compliance with House Bill 1110. So last week, the council met on 3 different days, and council Chair Hollingsworth approached the review of these 100+ amendments by first proposing a consent agenda for amendments to the plan, as well as amendments to the House Bill 1110 implementation legislation. The consent agenda meant that they were voted on as a block, and then any council members who wanted to speak specifically to one amendment could remove that amendment from the consent agenda, and Council Walk would then discuss each of those amendments. It was a little bit of a challenge to follow, and Olivia, John, and I did our best to do so. On Friday, the council actually went into executive session, which means it's not open to the public, to consult with the city's law department. And in doing so, then came back and reconvened late Friday afternoon to discuss a resolution, which so for amendments that were not passed but not rejected, that the council wanted to pull out into a resolution for next year's consideration in the annual comprehensive plan amendment process. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions about process. And later on today, I can send you all a summary. Matt shared a summary that was put together by the complete Communities Coalition. And then also John and Olivia have put together a summary of those amendments that were passed or not passed or deferred to next year's consideration. Those amendments that the commission had noted interest in. So with that, I'm going to pause to see if there are any questions about the process or where we stand right now. Okay, I am not seeing any questions. I invite any commissioners who followed the process last week, if you would like to share observations or comments with your colleagues, now would be a good time to do so. Again, just put your name in the chat if you would like to do that. Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll call on myself here. Let's see. I think, as we've gone along this journey, I think we all have some, there are definitely things about the comprehensive plan, where it is, where it's landed, how it's developed, that has, we would all characterize it as falling short. But I wanted to look at the silver lining briefly and just take us back, a decade. In 2016, it was impossible to think that single family zoning was anything other than a sacred cow and kind of a third rail in Seattle politics. And seeing the amendment process and how it's really played out gives me a lot of hope for the potential for our neighborhoods to grow and increase in vitality and provide new housing. And so I just wanted to, I think, look on the bright side. We still have tons of work to do, but I wanted to highlight just how far we've come on that.
Thanks, Matt. I would agree with you. So one more point to add to the process. So the select committee is comprised of the full council. And at the conclusion of their vote last week, the comp plan and the associated legislation to implement House Bill 1110 will go into a period of having further environmental review and study from consultants who worked on the EIS, because there are some amendments that were passed that need a little extra review. And so council is due to adopt the comprehensive plan and that implementing legislation in about a month's time. That will be right in the middle of budget. So planning commission staff will be both following obviously the budget process and updating you on that, as well as soon as the date for the comprehensive plan and associated legislation, as soon as that vote date is announced, we will share that with you all. And I see that Dylan has a comment. Glasecki, Dylan G.
Hey guys, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Sorry about the audio issues earlier. So question about the process. Is my understanding is that the amendments are done, what is going to be voted on is set, and they are going to vote, like you mentioned, in a month or 2 months or so. Is that the case? Is there any other opportunity for advocacy between now and then? Or is it basically kind of closed door and advocacy, they start looking for input again next year as they take up phase 2? Because is the door closed on any further advocacy or changes?
In my opinion, I believe the door has almost closed for any advocacy around the comp plan and the associated legislation. I believe City Council will probably take public comment on the day they vote but that will definitely be very 11th hour, and the chances of them making any changes, I think, are pretty slim. So my suggestion would be for the commission to really focus on the resolution, which details those amendments that had support from the council, but were deemed to need more additional review and additional work than more than could be accomplished within the time frame of about a month. So that would be my suggestion to the commission, to really focus on the resolution. And again, we will send out links to the resolution and the comp plan and the associated legislation to implement HB 1110. I see Michaela has a comment or a question.
I have some more just kind of like overarching reflections on the process now that we're at this stage where, yes, I believe that we're kind of going to cross the finish line with what we have in place right now. And I do appreciate Matt showing some leadership and trying to find the positive silver lining, but I'm not chair of the commission anymore, and so I don't have to be that voice. And I do just want to make a couple points. One, the state had to force Seattle's hand to actually open up its single family zones. And so I do not think we are here today because of brave politicians and elected officials doing what the experts and community members were saying was necessary to open up more parts of our Seattle city for more people. And in many respects, they were doing the bare minimum. And in my day job, I managed a process where we reviewed all of the comprehensive plans of, at this point, 35 of the 40 jurisdictions in King County. And I can say from my 20,000-foot view, there are other cities in this county that are leading the way and pushing the limits beyond what Seattle was willing to do. And so I think I'm disappointed at the outcome. This has been a really, really, really long process, and there's been a lot of sort of negotiations at the end here that it just doesn't feel good to me. And we invested a lot of time. We've invested years of time, of our personal time in service to this commission and in service of this comprehensive plan. And I just kind of feel like another citizen in the process. It does not feel to me like we don't have the authority or any kind of like formal step in the decision-making process with the comprehensive plan that really helps temper the political outcomes at the end. And because we're advisory and we're limited to going to public hearings and giving comment and submitting written comment like everybody else, I think it diminished all of the work we were doing, one, and there might be some need to do some reflection as to how we engage in a process like this in the future, particularly when it falls on deaf ears. And maybe we need to focus on different things. It's kind of where I'm feeling a little deflated, I guess, as anybody would who volunteers their time and cares a lot. So that's where I am today. And I look forward to finding ways that we can be, if our strength is like just being a public thought partner, not partner, we're not a partner for anybody, but if it's really just doing some independent research and publishing some stuff and trying to be part of the public narrative, I think we should lean into that. And then finally, just kind of observing the media headlines around the comprehensive plan. This really became a story about trees. And the commission didn't really take a stance on it because and from my perspective, that was really the responsibility of and the authority of the Urban Forestry Commission. But in retrospect, I felt like folks were turning to me as a commissioner to say, what should we do about this tree issue? What's the right solution? And to not have like a coherent and really thought, like we just weren't informed enough to engage in that. And maybe the next time we see those big things coming up, we should think about partnerships with other commissions where we're talking to them and helping to make sure that like we understand the issue from the lens of the other commissions and can engage thoughtfully on the topic. Anyway, those are my random reflections. Sorry to be kind of a wet blanket.
Thanks, Michaela. Thanks for your observations and reflections. I took them all in, and I think we can, as we move through the next couple of months, looking at this resolution that the council passed for items to be studied further next year in next year's annual amendment process. We will be engaged, obviously, in that process. And we can discuss as a commission if there's any kind of shift or evolution of our approach that we want to take as we engage with the items that are noted in that resolution for the 2026 work plan. And I see, Matt, you've noted that you can't see the chat, so I will be your chat reader. And I'm not seeing anybody in the chat, and our guests have arrived, so I think we can close this portion of the meeting and move on to the next.
Okay, oh, I just lost my chair's notes here. Hang on a sec. Right. Okay, so next item on the agenda is Sarah Bells from the Office of Planning and Community Development and Nicole Stafford from the Mayor's Innovation and Performance Team. Let's see, so Sarah Bells is the new Deputy Director of OPCD. And Nicole is from Innovation and Performance. You're joining us to give us an update on the city's interdepartmental anti-displacement work group. Anti-displacement was one of our big 4 topics that we focused on in 2022 in advance of the major update, the comprehensive plan. It's an issue that we've discussed quite a bit and are keenly interested in. So we have an hour for this agenda item. So welcome, Sarah and Nicole. Oh, do we need to do a quick round of intros?
I think it would be a good idea, Matt, just a rapid fire as we haven't spoken to Nicole and Sarah before, just so they know who they're speaking to.
Okay, great. All right, let's make this fast. Matt Hutchins, he, him, architect, West Seattle. All right, Zio.
Zio Alvarez, she, they, designer, White Center, Highland Park. Rose.
Rose, they, them, wetland biologist, permitting specialist with Jacobs in Licton Springs, Northgate area. Pass to Andy.
Andy Dannenberg, he, him, Northeast Seattle, teach at University of Washington in Public Health and Urban Planning. Whoever's next.
How about Nick?
Hello, Nick Whipple, he, him pronouns. I live in West Seattle, a city planner over on the east side. Michaela.
Michaela Daffern, she, her pronouns. I'm a housing planner with King County. And oh boy, Dylan Stevenson.
Dylan Stevenson, assistant professor of urban planning at UW. And I'll pass it to Caleb.
Caleb Toolday, he, him pronouns. Live in Beacon Hill, and I'm an educator, and I'll pass it to Deanna.
Diana Quintana, she, her, Capitol Hill, multimodal transportation planner. Dylan G.
I believe Dylan had to leave early, so let's pop over to Radhika.
Radhika Nair, she, her. I live in Wedgwood in Northeast Seattle, and I'm a city planner.
How about Julia?
Julia Janin Shields, she, her. I'm a community planner focused on equity and engagement for King County, and I live in Ballard. And I'll pass it to Rebecca.
Rebecca Brune, she, her, live in Crown Hill, and I work for Sound Transit doing transit-oriented development. And I need help, Vanessa.
And let's close out with Margaret.
Great. Hi, Margaret, she, her, Fremont, and I'm a law student at UW.
Great. Vanessa Murdoch, staff to the commission, Olivia, and then we've got John Hoy and Robin McGonigal, all also staff. So with that, we will turn it to you all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having us. Here, I'm going to load up our PowerPoint here. And, oops, sorry, I'm having some issues with seeing my screen here. Okay. All right.
Great.
Nicole, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, yeah. Like the speakers had said, I'm Nicole Stafford, a senior strategy and innovation advisor with the innovation and performance team. She, her, and I live in Capitol Hill. I love that everyone said where they lived, so I like that intro. So I had helped spearhead some of the research that the innovation performance team did back in, oh gosh, October, November of last year. And really came about because of this group knows quite familiar with the updated comprehensive plan, so I don't need to say too much about that, but the mayor's office had asked the IP team, Innovation Performance, to conduct some research. As indicated in the Growth Management Act, the city needed to have anti-displacement strategies in place as we were going through this upzoning process. So I had conducted the research. And I'm going to share just a few slides. This is a very similar presentation that I did to City Council back in January of this year. So if anyone had listened to that or was present for that, this should be somewhat familiar. So we started out by defining displacement. There are lots of different definitions in the literature of what this could mean. And so for the purposes of our research and how we organized ourselves at the city, we use this definition. Displacement occurs when households are forced to move involuntary for economic or physical reasons, or prevented from moving into a neighborhood because of high rents or home prices. Displacement is distinct from residential mobility, which includes more voluntary household movement. And our research focused primarily on physical displacement and economic displacement. That we do have some programming in the cultural displacement and commercial, but I want to highlight that our research really focused on the physical and economic, given how salient those two forms of displacement were going to be given the updated comprehensive plan. Thank you. Yeah, next slide. So the mayor's office wanted to understand a few different questions around anti-displacement. So that's kind of how we anchored our research. One of the questions being, what is the city already doing that has potential to mitigate displacement? We really went into this process not wanting to recreate the wheel here, knowing that we have a lot of longstanding and new programs that could have had potential in this area. The mayor's office also wanted to know what evidence there is to support what the city is doing in this space, and how the city could improve what we're already doing, and if there are any big gaps in the city's efforts to mitigate displacement. So I think you can go to the next slide. So how we approached the research. We conducted a big literature review, understanding what other cities have done in this space, what the nonprofit organization, academic institutions, white papers, different consolidation of papers, to understand what the evidence, what has robust evidence, and what things are kind of new that different cities are trying, including the city of Seattle. We then created a program inventory of all the programs with potential to mitigate displacement, and found about 22 programs across the city.
across 6 different departments. We then started collecting quantitative and qualitative data about these programs. How many people are registered? When did the program start? What sort of outcome data do we have available to help us understand what the state of our city is in this space? So some of the key insights, like I said, we have 22 programs with potential to mitigate displacement. We also have unprecedented investments in affordable housing over the last couple of years, and that is an important aspect to mitigating displacement is more supply of affordable housing. We also found that there's some pretty strong coordination within program departments, but as soon as coordination across departments needed to happen, that's where the link was a little bit weaker. We found high to moderate evidence for the majority of our programs and policies. And then sort of the next tranche of information was some of the newer programs did not have a robust evidence base, but that is partly why evaluation is an important component of what we're doing in the future. Then let's see if there's any other. Oh yeah, we started with a pretty rich baseline of data for monitoring displacement. One of the other key questions was how can we be more proactive in this space instead of fairly reactive? And so through OPCD's programming, we had a pretty rich baseline for how to understand that issue. And we also have a promising track record for centralizing a lot of our affordability programs. I might talk about this a little bit later, but we have a platform called CiviForm, which is there's an executive order from, I believe, 2023 that is slowly bringing all of the programs, affordability programs onto this platform to help cross-promote. So you might be eligible for food assistance like Fresh Bucks, but you might also be eligible for something like emergency rental assistance because both of those are very income driven. The next slide. So all of this research kind of culminated in a handful of recommendations. The first one was to use data to actively monitor displacement risk. So we had, in partnership with IP and OPCD, created a prototype dashboard to help monitor displacement across the city. That's a bit more real time than some of the previous tools that we had in our toolkit. And the second one is around targeting our outreach and community engagement. We have a lot of great programs at the city, but some of them are, you could consider under-enrolled, or that we talked to community members and they didn't know that these programs existed. So really pursuing an effort to coordinate our outreach and do a better job of communicating out these types of programs. The third one was around improving service design. This kind of gets to my earlier point around our platform for CiviForm. We also have a great team that is very skilled at process improvement. And so we've already started that process with our economic displacement relocation assistance program, our tenant relocation assistance program, and emergency rental assistance to better improve the design of those programs and make them easier and more accessible for folks to access. And then the fourth one is a strategy. We found that there were pieces of preserving what's called naturally occurring affordable housing, or housing that's affordable without any public subsidy, but really found that there could be more effort in creating a holistic strategy in that space. And so that is tagged for our Office of Housing next steps. I think that's a pretty high level overview, but I think I'm going to pass it off to Sarah. We started this, again, the fall was the research, really launched it at the beginning of the year, and this whole year has been lots of planning and coordinating, and so I'll let Sarah kind of take it on from here.
Thank you, Nicole. So I'm Sarah Bells, she, her pronouns. I live in Finney Ridge. I'm the new deputy director at OPCD. I just joined the department in July, but have mostly been around the city in various roles since about 2008. So I am pretty new to the anti-displacement work group, but I am excited to be part of the team and helping to move this work forward. Sort of picking it up from Nicole, as the innovation performance team was doing their work last fall and into early this year. In January, the mayor's office issued an anti-displacement executive order, which was really what laid the groundwork for the convening of the anti-displacement work group, which is now continuing to carry this work forward. And some of the key tasks that were assigned to the ADWG in the executive order included improving and building on the displacement risk dashboard, crafting a coordinated anti-displacement outreach and communication strategy, and then developing an evaluation framework for anti-displacement programs and policies across the city. And I just want to note Philip Cornell and Diana Kinsnary from OPCD. They are two of our in-house data specialists are on the call. Philip's here with us in person, and Diana's online, and they've been doing a ton of work to advance the dashboard. And at the end of the presentation, we can set aside some time if folks have questions about that work, and we also have some images we can share of how that work is kind of coming together and how it's looking. And then in terms of the outreach and communication strategy, that's also work that's being coordinated and convened by OPCD staff. Our communications manager is leading that effort. And then Nicole and her colleagues at Innovation and Performance, they are developing the evaluation framework for the anti-displacement work going forward. After the executive order was issued in January, shortly thereafter, the Anti-Displacement Action Plan was released by the Innovation and Performance team, which was really, I think, kind of the culmination of all the work that Nicole just described. And there is a link in the presentation there for folks that are interested in checking out the plan. We can also put the link in the chat once I get off of this presentation setting, if folks want to take a look at that. But the action plan, I think, does a great job articulating sort of opportunities and specific actions that the city can take to advance. I'm going to go back a couple slides here. Sort of these buckets of work that Nicole described. So, okay. So in terms of where we are now, the anti-displacement work group has been convened. It includes representatives from, I believe, 6 departments. Is that right? And we meet quarterly. And sort of the key tasks right now are, as was described in the executive order, moving the dashboard work ready, developing an implementation plan, which includes an evaluation framework going forward, and then also the outreach and communications coordination work across departments. So what we are doing right now, we're in the process of developing a detailed implementation plan in partnership with representatives from the 6 departments that are included in the ADWG. We have a draft due to the mayor's office next month, and the plan is to have a final implementation plan ready by the end of the year. And then in 2026 and into 2027, we'll sort of move into the implementation and ongoing monitoring phase. And then you can see on the bottom half of the screen, it just sort of shows how the work of the anti-displacement work group aligns with other sort of larger anti-displacement related deliverables that other departments are currently working on right now. And then this just zooms in a little bit more detailed work plan for the ADWG specifically, and just kind of shows kind of what some of our key deliverables and sort of timeline points have been over the course of this year and then going forward. I think in addition to the delivery of the draft implementation plan next month, Philip and Diana are also planning to convene a meaning-making workshop related to the dashboard work, convening representatives from departments across the city that are engaged in sort of the data piece of this. And Philip, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but
it's that workshop will primarily be to look at the most current draft, some of which we have images of later on in the slide deck, and kind of drafting key takeaways from the data themselves, and then discussing kind of where it fits in the strategies of departments and teams.
All right. Sorry, my computer's being a little slow here. Okay, so this is just a short description of the anti-displacement implementation plan that we're working on right now, due by the end of the year. And the purpose of it is just to provide clarity of actions and timelines for the ADWG's work in 2026 and beyond. The audience is really primarily internal to the city. I mean, it'd be a public document, but it's really intended to guide the work happening internal to departments across the city related to this body of work. And then this again is just sort of outlining the key components of the implementation plan as it's coming together. And again, it's sort of focused on these broken out into 4 buckets here, but really the 3 buckets around the dashboard work, the outreach, communications, and sort of resource coordination strategies, and then articulating the evaluation framework for 2026 and beyond. And then there's also some other city programs that are highlighted in the implementation plan as well. As Nicole mentioned, just things like, bringing programs into the Civiform format, things like that. So immediate next steps for the ADWG, the meeting making workshop for the dashboard is scheduled for October 7th. Our draft implementation plans due to the mayor's office October 15th, and then we're hoping to have a final implementation plan ready by the end of the year. So that's what we're working on. And then the ADWG itself, the interdepartmental team, we're continuing to meet quarterly and just doing what we can to make sure we're staying on schedule and advancing the work as articulated in the executive order. And that's kind of our 20,000-foot overview. Yeah. Anyone has questions?
Yeah, if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat and I'll go one by one. I think Michaela is hot on the button here. Buzzes in first.
Thank you for the presentation. The Commission's always been really supportive of anti-displacement measures. We've produced a white paper on it to guide the comprehensive plan. And so just appreciate that Seattle continues to sort of think about this. I did notice that I find it interesting that this endeavor is being coordinated by the mayor's office. And it's a lot of like planning and communications and marketing strategies, which I just think it seems like an odd prioritization of resources and staff time. And you mentioned that this executive order came about because of the requirement in the Growth Management Act. There's an additional part of that nested policy framework is there's also the King County Countywide planning policies. And one of the policies there requires Seattle to adopt or implement anti-displacement measures before or concurrent with capacity increases. And so Seattle's doing capacity increases as part of its comprehensive plan. And I just hear a lot of like planning and like we're going to have an implementation plan that comes out of this. I want to know what the city is doing in response to that countywide planning policy requirement. Like what is happening, what has happened, or what is happening right now in response to this comprehensive planning effort. And then just say that like it's a zero-sum game, right? If you're drawing upon staff for this effort, there's probably work that staff aren't doing elsewhere. And urge the city to put time and resources into implementation and acting and adopting and implementing things rather than continuing to create plans to implement things. Like folks have been the displacement of folks out of Seattle, out of their communities, has been rampant for years. And we need to continue to be developing strategies in consultation with communities and not just in consultation with other departments within Seattle. And the time for action is now. Let's get to work. Anyway, so can you tell me how you were responsive to that countywide planning policy requirement?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. So you mentioned, capacity through the comprehensive plan, but there needing to be anti-displacement measures in place. And so that, I think very similarly to the Growth Management Act, is understanding what measures we already have in place and where we need to bolster them. So one of the things we did this year was we had like 4 different emergency rental assistance programs that were across 4 departments that had different purposes and were very confusing and complicated for residents to navigate. And the best resource we had was a piece of paper that somebody wrote down that had all of these nonprofits that had emergency rental assistance on it. Terrible process. It was technically something the city had in place. We had funded it through certain, 4 different departments. But what we spent, several months at the beginning of this year was understanding how to make that better, because that is a pretty important anti-displacement program that the city has started to invest in through federal dollars. Those federal dollars are largely gone. And so what do we want to do as a city to maintain that program? To what end? How do we want to make sure that people have access to it? And so there was yet another executive order around emergency rental assistance that increased funding for it, collapsed it into a single department, prioritized that our goal is around preventing homelessness, preventing eviction, and increasing stability of households who might be experiencing financial instability. And so that was more on the, implementation side, to your point. There is a lot of planning happening, but I will say every department that kind of owns some of these programs is also very much in implementation mode and is executing on some of these recommendations to make it easier for people to get the help that they need to stay in their neighborhoods if they so choose to. I don't know if that's totally answered your question, but that's kind of what came to my mind when you were speaking, Michaela.
I think it's helpful. May I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
What is the outcome or purpose of the marketing and communications part of the work? I guess I don't totally understand that. Would love to understand that better.
Yeah. So that is really about driving increased enrollment. So we know, given some demographic data, that there are a lot of people in the city of Seattle who are eligible for our programs, but we think that there is under enrollment given the data that we have available. And so part of that problem sort of breakdown is awareness could be an issue. It could also be that it's difficult to apply. So we're tackling both of those issues, awareness and, reducing friction in the application process. And so the ultimate goal of increasing our or better coordinating our outreach and communications is to get people into these programs if they are eligible to help their situation.
And if I can add one thing to that too, as Nicole mentioned earlier, there were 22 anti-displacement programs that were identified as part of the innovation and performance team's work. So some of the communication coordination work that's going on as well is about getting department staff sort of up to speed and educated about like what exists so that they can sort of work together to help get the word out about opportunities and make sure that community members are being connected to resources that they're eligible for.
Yeah, a great example is with the utility discount program. It's one of our most it's got decent enrollment. It's got a good chunk of a Seattle population who are within certain income eligibility enrolled in it. And so one of our ideas was, could we cross promote? If people are already eligible for the utility discount program, we should be telling them that we have emergency rental assistance. If their rent is increased by more than 10%, they have this other program at their disposal. We have other things to help sort of alleviate some of the financial pressures that they may be feeling in this environment. But without UDP fully understanding all of the programs we have, we can't really do that cross promotion, especially at a time when somebody's kind of entering into a program.
Very helpful, man. I read communications as like risk management for the mayor when
No.
That's great. On that topic, I will. Are you cross promoting programs that aren't under Seattle's control, like
Well,
the senior property tax exemption?
that's exactly, yep. That is one
Okay.
that we are actually starting to have conversations with the King County Assessor's Office to understand, can we put a tile on our assistance and discounts page? Can we cross promote if somebody's eligible for this? Can we point them to that one? So that's actually a huge, one of the ones that opportunities we listed to cross promote some of the county programs.
Thanks. Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay. Are there other folks who have comments? I'm getting the chat now, so, but I don't see anybody. If not, I do have a question. I'm curious about looking at the report. Some of the programs for the naturally occurring affordable housing. I'm curious what the contours of this program might be. This city/community right of first refusal policy or notice of intent to sell, and just go through the kind of like what the contours of the naturally occurring, affordable housing preservation strategy are. Those all seem tricky.
Yes. So a part of the reason it is, I understand the frustration with like planning to plan, but this is particularly one where we knew there were components of this type of strategy, but wanted to give the Office of Housing time to wrestle and figure out what a holistic strategy could look like, especially in an environment where building is more expensive than acquiring. What would trigger the Office of Housing to acquire as opposed to build? So wanting them to kind of lay out what that could look like and having the ecosystem in place to move on those opportunities. So we do have a notice of intent to sell policy. I'm not an expert in this space because I looked at 22 different programs, so I'm not an expert in any one of those 22, but I will try my best to give you a high level of what that is. So the notice of intent to sell policy, if a building or a unit is affordable at, I think it's 80% AMI, area median income, then it would trigger the city to be notified if that property was to be put up for sale. Now, right now, I think there were about 4 or 5 notices that were sent in 2024, but there was no action taken on them. So it's kind of a, for lack of a better word, a toothless policy in the sense it's great that we know when these buildings are being sold, but we need to have a strategy and an action plan in place for acting on those notices if the timing and the economic environment is right. So what that program could look like, the contours of that program could look like, could be having a roster of nonprofit developers in place to be able to respond to those notices in partnership with our Office of Housing. It could look like having a fund available specifically for acquisitions that is different than building or helping support our already existing inventory of affordable housing. And I think there was like one other aspect, but those were things that just came up in my research that other cities are exploring, but it's really going to be up to our Office of Housing to determine what is best for that strategy. And I think that's expected in later in 2026.
And to be clear, that notification, those are private market units that happen to be just naturally less expensive. Those are not subsidized in any way. The ones that
correct. Yeah. Our Office of Housing would know if there was, because they are funders for our affordable housing. I think there's a different mechanism in which they would know if that is going to be up for sale.
Michaela, you have a comment?
I do. I just wanted, I love this topic. I'm passionate about this topic. My next door neighbors all were evicted from their homes after the property turned over. It was sold and turned over. And they tried their best to utilize the right of first refusal But generally speaking, random renters in a building, even if a lot of them have lived there for a really long time, don't have the infrastructure, aren't organized. They don't have the infrastructure and they don't have the resources together or the legal supports together to be able to really act on those opportunities. And so all these folks who'd really built this intentional community over the many decades, who were all benefiting from under market rent, ended up like they got tenant relocation assistance, but it highlighted for me some of the weaknesses in the notice of intent to sell program.
Yeah.
And I serve on this commission's housing and neighborhoods committee, and we've talked about this in the past. And I'm supposed to say things that I put in the chat and read them into the record. So just wanted to say that I shared a very old but still interesting audit report on Seattle's notice of intent to sell program that kind of highlighted some of those issues, Matt, if you wanted to learn more. And I'm thrilled to hear that the city is still trying to think about how to make it work and function, at least for nonprofits to turn it into affordable housing.
Yeah, actually, to your point, Michaela, we do have a pilot that the Office of Housing is pursuing through some HUD funding called stabilizing tenants through affordable home ownership is the proper term, but it is around, it identifies the problem that organizing and capacity, financially, time, expertise for some of these renters who are in units to be able to organize and purchase a building if it were to go up to sale is very limited. And so this pilot is looking at how can the city bolster that capacity to do that. So I am interested to see, over the next year or so how their learnings from that pilot. But I do know that's an effort underway to address some of those issues.
Okay, it can't just be Michaela and I. Rebecca.
Hi, I have my thoughts not fully formulated yet, so apologies in advance. But I'm wondering if this effort contemplates kind of the inherent tension between, production and development and displacement, and which often goes hand in hand with, gentrification. And I know that there's a risk of scope creep here where, a lot of these efforts are very focused on, the impacted communities and doesn't go upstream that much as far as, suppressing housing costs through things like production, through things like, just cost of living in general. And I think coming out of these conversations that we've had around the comp plan and how there was a lot of anti-displacement talk, that was, mostly cover for we don't want our neighborhoods to change very much. I'm wondering what those conversations looked like in developing this implementation plan and how it feeds into the evaluation framework, if at all, and how the city is kind of approaching that when talking with community about these programs. If it comes up that, part of the reason why they're being displaced is new development, is gentrification, which, is a double-edged sword, but just wondering about your conversations around that.
So just one thought I have kind of in response to this, and sorry, Philip and Dan, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, but I think a lot of the work that you're doing on the data dashboard gets into this a little bit because it's, we're trying to be, proactive, thinking about like what are the data points we should be tracking, what kind of making sure trying to like get ahead of things before they become a bigger issue. I don't know. We have a couple of like sort of the images here of kind of the way that this is all sort of coming together. But I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about just sort of how the dashboard is trying to like sort of take a holistic view of the data that's available and using that as, bit of a predictive tool for the city, so we sort of know what to look for.
in terms of neighborhood change or community change.
And funnily enough, the one that we're looking at is permit applications, like the one that I took the screenshot of. So Rebecca, to that to that point, I mean, I think that part of this is like the nuance that comes out of development and the idea that yes, new housing can also meet our housing demand and help mitigate displacement in one way, but on the other hand also can be a signal of rising home costs and actually can drive the overall median rents in a neighborhood if it's kind of not within the form that is already there, and sometimes can directly replace units that were on a site before, or businesses that were there, as we've seen a lot of commercial sites, grocery stores be redeveloped into the mid-rises, such as up in Queen Anne, things like that. So this is intended to look at several different types of indicators. This one is under the guise of displacement pressures. So some of these indicators y'all might already be familiar with under OPCD's Heightened Displacement Risk Indicator webpage. This is kind of the next step of a lot of those indicators where we're taking this dashboard. And y'all can see here there's permit applications, permits issued. We've also added in data using CoStar real estate analytics surrounding apartments, including apartment vacancy and apartment rent price change over time. Both of these, which I was able to go back and have data all the way back to 2001 this week. Before we were only going to have like 2 years of data. Nicole's hearing this for the first time. And then also our tenant relocation assistance program, and then our single family home price methodology that we use to look. So we have a handful of different indicators, different ways to look at them. In particular, these permit applications, you can look at it both by units or the number of buildings that are being permitted, by neighborhood, by year, and then over time. So we're also able to show different concentrations of them. And really in the concept of like this anti-displacement work group, how this data is then used is, and Diana might talk to this a little bit, is we've started to think about typologies of how we might use these different data sets and bring them into policy considerations across the city. And this dashboard is intended to kind of be an informative, holistic perspective that when we get into those anti-displacement work group meetings, we can reflect upon, look at the changes that have happened, and then consider whether strategies also should shift based on those. And to what extent it would be appropriate to do it across the 22 different programs, 6 different departments. Diana, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd like to note that, really this dashboard is meant to, with the fact that it's going to be updated on a much more regular basis, right, than every 5 years. We are going to be having quarterly updates as data on these various indicators become available. And these indicators in the dashboard are really meant to help us understand the types of displacement risk that are especially heating up, where they're heating up. We also have some citywide level indicators disaggregated by demographics that we're going to be adding so we can better understand the groups of households and what types of housing they live in are being most affected at the time. So this is meant to help city programs be more nimble in response. We are really pairing this with what I believe you're all, or many of you are familiar with, the Displacement Risk Index, which is more of a heat map that takes a longer term view of where vulnerable populations are most likely to be displaced into the medium to long term future. It's really important to look at the two of those in concert with each other, and this dashboard will be linking also to that. It will include a user's guide, and yes, this will be public facing.
And the slide that we flipped to right now, Diana was discussing as well some of the demographic indicators that we've included. So the individual ones here being the people of color population, low-income households, and cost burden low-income households. For both the low-income households and the cost burden low-income households, we have separate tabs to look at that both by renter and owners. That way, programs that focus on different populations, on different household types, have the data that they need. And then not included in here is a screenshot of the displacement risk index that Diana was talking about at the end.
And I want to make just one more comment that we kind of started this research around the same time. There was an Eco Northwest report that indicated where, based on the zoning changes, we think development is going to happen. And so I know, at that sort of snapshot in time, it looked like it wasn't happening where the most vulnerable populations in terms of ability to push back on that kind of development pressure existed. But this tool is going to help us kind of in real time see if that plays out. And if we do see development heating up in an area that happens to overlap with more features of displacement vulnerability, then we can ramp up outreach and targeting of our programs or change some of our program parameters because of the situation that's changed. And so we're hoping that as we exercise using this data more regularly with our programs, we can make those sorts of changes way faster than we've been able to do as a city.
Thank you. I know that you guys were slated to leave at 8:45. Do we have time for Theo, short question?
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. My understanding of the report that was produced, at least, but I don't think the body of work that y'all are undertaking is that it mostly focuses on housing displacement. And I was wondering if you could speak to how you're thinking of sort of a similar body of work on commercial and cultural displacement, which of course is sort of tightly connected to housing. But at least from my perspective on it, maybe requires different lenses or different data to track.
I will say the scope of this work was focused on housing and physical and economic displacement. We do have some programs around cultural displacement, and I do know OED is doing stuff in the commercial displacement space. But I will say that probably would take a whole nother sort of body of research to understand what works and what doesn't work and what other cities are doing. And so I know you'd probably have to talk directly to those departments that hold those programming. But I know that there's work in the city that's being done in that space. But we did want to carve out specifically for this work group the intentionality and the focus on housing, given the updated comprehensive plan. That doesn't mean in the future other departments can't bolster their efforts in these other spaces, but just to be able to help focus on this work for the immediate future, as we wanted to narrow that in.
Okay. Do you guys have any more time, or off you go?
I got 4 more minutes before I have to jump upstairs.
Four more minutes. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. I think that let's see. Andy had a question about if there is an evaluation component to examine if efforts are making a difference.
Yes, that is part of the executive order, is to have a evaluation framework that all of the departments with their many programs can feed into and are sort of evaluating things in the same way. A lot of these programs that the city started before this conversation on anti-displacement, or maybe they mention anti-displacement in their, project charter, but maybe they don't. And so understanding and being all on the same page about how we're measuring success in anti-displacement. So that plan is currently being, that sort of framework is currently being developed and reviewed. And at the same time, we're sort of standardizing how we collect data so that we can look across all departments and programs to understand what's working and what's not working. So that is very much part of that.
Can I add to that question how you separate which strategies are working and which ones aren't? It seems to me the dashboard captures the sum total of all their impacts.
Yes, I would say from what we're working on actually adding to the dashboard is enrollment of our programs. So just because we have something like emergency rental assistance, right now we don't have a great way of knowing like who in what areas, to what extent this program is being taken advantage of. And so to be able to say, is it working or not working, we need to have kind of that understanding and overlay it with all the other information we know about development and displacement vulnerability. So we're working on incorporating that, but that is kind of all part of the process. I don't know, Philip or Sarah, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think that's a major work in progress.
Yeah, for sure. And different programs have different, again, because not everyone was created as an anti-displacement program, might have different definitions of success for that program, but we're trying to define what success looks like for this body of work.
Okay,
Thank you both
great.
so much.
Let's see.
And for Diana so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for staying a little late, answering our questions, and exposing us to this this great work. It's really starting to see the city really dig into this level of nuanced analysis, and hopefully it has a huge impact in making our efforts around anti-displacement much more effective. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so we still have 10 more minutes in our meeting itself. Vanessa had suggested if we wanted to circle back to discussions about the comp plan and also next steps, we could follow up, have a little bit more of an expanded conversation with our last few minutes.
So Olivia is going to be dropping into the chat a link to the City Council blog. And within that, there are links to the legislation that came out of the Select Committee last week. So that's a good resource, thanks, Olivia, for knowing what passed and what didn't pass. And specifically, I'd suggest taking a look at that resolution. I think there will be an opportunity, as I alluded to earlier, for the commission to think about if the commission wants to engage at all in this budget process that is just kicking off or kicked off yesterday. If you look at the resolution that was passed, there's a lot of work that is being asked of OPCD, not limited to environmental review, but also includes potentially additional outreach. And my understanding is that body of work doesn't have a funding source. So similar to the commission, there is a precedent for the Planning Commission engaging in the City Council budget process. A few years ago, the commission pointed out that there was insufficient budget for meaningful engagement around the comp plan update. And there were, in response to that and others, City Council did increase the engagement budget. This is a couple of years ago, not to the extent that the commission had suggested, but at least it was a bump up. So I think something for commissioners to be thinking about in the next few weeks is if you all want to engage in the budget process to point out that a lot of the work around this resolution that passed last Friday is doesn't have a funding source or a dedicated staff.
Nick, I think you've got a comment.
I was just noting, and maybe Vanessa, correct me if I'm wrong, was it through the budget process that there was also that risk of some cuts to Seattle Planning Commission staff, and we had weighed in on that as well. Maybe that was at a different time, but my memory was it was during the budget.
It was, yeah, so that was last year. And the commission weighed in on the budget, I think it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, to increase the budget for community outreach. And you're right, Nick, the commission also did note concern, significant concern about any proposed staffing cuts in last year's budget. In this year's budget, there is no proposed staffing cut to the planning commission.
Okay, and is this year's budget, was last year the mid biennium, and then this year is like it's now looking at the next 2 years? Is that correct?
I think this year is the mid biennium. I believe last year was for 2 years.
Okay.
But in the budget situation that the city's been experiencing the last couple of years, almost every year becomes a very involved budget
Okay.
process.
Okay, because that was going to be my question too. If it was a mid-buy, if this is just like adjustments to kind of ensure, I guess that they're fulfilling some of the obligations, or if this was actually looking at a more kind of robust budget process.
Yeah, to Olivia's point, I think the next couple of years, every year is going to be a robust budget process.
Michaela, you had a comment?
Vanessa, just wondering what kind of engagement strategy you were thinking would be effective.
This was just pointed out to me yesterday, and so I'm still processing how best to engage. First, I think we need to hear the departments. Each of the departments will go ahead, not each, but many departments will go before the budget committee starting next week, I believe, and OPCD is the first department office up. So I think hearing what they have to say to council, and then also engaging council central staff who goes through a process of issue identification on behalf of the council members as they review the mayor's budget and points out areas that they think council might want to dig into. So I think my suggestion will be sort of a multi-pronged approach of who to engage with, starting with first hearing from OPCD at the budget committee, how they put forward what their concerns are, if they put forward their concerns.
I totally support this.
Other comments?
I'll just say that I support it too. I think I've been pretty vocal in the past about how important it is for our commission to participate in budget talks because money is what makes the comp plan policies actually follow through with action. So.
Thank you, Rose. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Well, if no one else has anything, I think we can adjourn a few, 180 seconds early. And everyone go enjoy one of the last sunny days of fall before the rains set in. Go Go get some blue sky. Thank you very much.
Bite your tongue, Matt. Thanks all.
Yeah, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.